Hi, everyone. Those lights are bright. Thank you for joining me for the very last session just before the awards come up. Can you hear me well at the very back? Okay, great. So I'm not going to share anything dramatically revolutionary here. What I'm going to share, though, is some things I've learned over my career. And a lot of this stuff you might have heard before, but I'm going to put it together in a neat little package that you can, when you get back to your jobs, you can, bring it back up whenever you're faced with a go-to-market strategy. So let me start by asking the folks here, when you think of a go-to-market strategy, what are some of the questions you think of asking? Can anybody just shout out? What are some of the questions you want to answer when you're thinking of go-to-market strategy? Great. Anything else? Awesome. Great. Fantastic. Competitive landscape, channels. Fantastic. Those are fantastic answers. I'm going to bubble it up a little bit higher level. I think one of the answers was fairly high level. When I think of go-to-market strategies, I'm just thinking of broadly three things. And I like simplicity because that's what I can remember. So here's the simple way of thinking about go-to-market strategy. Essentially, what are we going to sell? Whom are we going to sell it to? And how are we going to sell it? And if you simplify everything that you have to do along these three vectors, then I think all the various things actually ladder up against these, and you can think more at a forest level than getting caught up in competitive analysis, target markets, and all those things. So I want to unpack, in this presentation, I want to unpack each of these, and I want to give you examples of some of the strategies within each of these elements that have really delivered exponential growth. And I started my presentation with giving a lot of market examples, and I thought, I don't have enough time to delve into each of those. I'm just going to pick the examples from my own career. So I can go a little bit deeper in those, and you can ask me more questions, and I can tell you more details around those as well. So let's start with the first one, what to build. How many product marketers get involved with the question of what to build? I'm not talking about roadmap, I'm talking about the actual product itself. Raise your hands. That's awesome. That's more than I expected. But the majority of you who didn't raise your hand, that is our reality. And I want to, at the end of this presentation, if you stick around, I want to give you some things that I've tried and tested in my career that has helped me from becoming an execution arm to a much more strategic player in the organization who's helping define what products we take to the market. So what to build? I want to start with this Ansof's matrix. How many of you have seen this matrix before? It's a pretty popular matrix. It was defined by the famous Russian-American mathematician Igor Ansoff 60 years ago. It is as relevant today as it was back then. This is one of the most brilliant and simplistic models out there. It talks about the product market fit. So on the y-axis, you have the market you're trying to target, whether it's a new or existing market. On the x-axis, you have whether you're building a new product or you have an existing product. And the grid in the middle talks about the various strategies you can take to go there. For building a new product, I want to focus on the right column here, your right, the new product. So because you want to think about what's the new product you want to take to market. And the two strategies that sort of are within that is either developing a new product or diversifying your product. So if you're going after an existing market, you typically will think about developing a new product. If you're going after a new market, you're essentially diversifying your portfolio. So there are two strategies within each of these right column quadrants that I've seen in my career work very well. There's lots of ways to go about each of these, but I'll talk about two examples. And you can Google and you'll find other methodologies, other best practices as well. The things I've seen work is, for the very first quadrant here on the right, if you can think of a critical need that is existing in the market. By critical, I don't mean, what I mean by critical is that something that is so painful that customers are willing to pay for it. That is the critical need I'm talking about. And oftentimes we get, if I take examples like iPhone and people say, well, that need didn't exist before, that was a need that was discovered. I actually think that's not quite true. We all have a critical need for simplicity, for beauty, for excellence, and that's the critical need that product exploited, right? So when you think of this critical need, think of what is something that is valuable that customers are willing to pay for, and those are the things you're thinking about when you're developing new products. The second quadrant here at the bottom right corner is, if you're targeting a new market, it is a really long cycle if you want to develop your own product. The strategy that I've seen work over and over again with pretty much most companies out there is acquisition, right? And you've seen many examples from your own careers as well. So I want to talk about two examples here. Square. This is my career's biggest failure. We all have those. So I didn't work at Square. I actually worked at Intuit when Square launched. Square launched in 2009. I joined Intuit and took a product to market, which was a competitor for Square in 2010. It was called GoPayment. And we didn't succeed as well as Square did, but it taught me a lot of things. So the first thing that it taught me is how a product, Jack Dorsey is brilliant, the founder of Square, founder of Twitter as well. But what's brilliant about how he's approached this, he's taken a very complex, expensive market, and that was a very critical need in the market to have a simple solution, and he simplified the whole thing. Every aspect of their entire payments business was simplified. So the three things that strike me in his solution is, one, he simplified the pricing. Payments pricing is really, really complex. It runs pages and pages. And if you're a small, medium business, it takes you hours to even read the pricing and understand the pricing, comprehend it, and forget about predicting what your bill would look like. So he simplified the pricing. He made it one price point no matter what you're doing, which is beautiful. The second thing he did was, the hardware for payments is extremely expensive, and a small, medium business has to invest and even learn how to use it, which is very hard for, if you think about mom and pop shops out there who are not very tech savvy. So he made the hardware absolutely easy to use, the mobile app, you get it for free. The moment you sign up, you get it for free. The third thing he did is, he removed the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the complexity for a simple small, medium business. They don't have to read up literature to understand. It's a mobile app, you download it, you have a reader, you scan it, and the rest is history. So a beautiful example of how they found a critical need in the market, and they went after it by simplifying every single element of that and building a unique product in the market that essentially disrupted the whole space. The second example I want to give you is from my current company, Twilio. So Twilio, how many of you are familiar with Twilio? Oh, quite a lot, okay. So I joined Twilio 4 months ago, so I'm new to the company, but Twilio, for those of you who don't know, it has an API platform for communications. So by communications, I mean the SMS, voice calling, chat functionality. So developers, app developers can embed these APIs into their apps to enable communication. Now, Twilio had pretty much all the communication channels except email, right? A very critical and important communication channel. So instead of investing years and years into building an API platform for that channel, they simply went out and acquired SendGrid, a really massive acquisition that closed this Feb, and extremely successful even in the short period that they've completed the acquisition. We're targeting an entire new market. We've acquired a massive customer base, and we've literally, now we're at a run rate of $1 billion, hitting $1 billion run rate this year, which is to a large extent enabled through SendGrid. I'm sure you all have many examples of acquisitions as well. So let's move to, whom do you sell to? Here I want to dig a little bit deeper into the methodology. When you're thinking about whom do you sell to, and think about you starting from a completely blank slate, right? Nobody's telling you what the target market is. You have to come up with the whole thinking behind whom do you target. So the first thing I like to do when I'm doing that is I like to map out the entire solution for the customer. Notice I said solution and not product. Most of the time, nearly 100% of the time, unless you're a system integrator, your product is only a piece of the puzzle, right? So it's important that you map the entire solution stack. So think about the customer's problem and what is the solution they need to solve that entire problem. And a lot of times you'll find that the customer is actually packaging professional services from, say, companies like IBM or other companies in order to create that complete solution. So you need to know all the elements of that. Once you have a full picture of that entire solution that it takes to truly solve their need, that's when you have a good idea of what is the pain that they're trying to solve. Otherwise, you're focusing on that narrow piece of pain point and just solving for that with your product. Once you do that, you want to now understand what is the economic solution, right? You want to map the dollar. There's a dollar that the customer gives out for that problem. How does that map against every element of that solution? And there's multiple people taking pieces of the dollar, right? It's getting cut into smaller chunks. And at this point, you want to also think about opportunity side. What is the size of the players in each of these areas? So if you think about the big circle out here, that might be a supplier. The circle below, so the end circle is, of course, the customer. But the circle below might be a professional services firm. So you want to understand the dollar value against each of these people and the economic value of this entire solution so you can understand where do you play and what is the value you'll get from each and what's the size of that. That's when you can truly figure out whom do you want to target. I want to give you an example from my professional career. So I was at Jasper, which got acquired by Cisco. So it's Cisco Jasper, it's an IoT platform. And Jasper, when I joined Jasper, I was taking a new product to market. And the intent behind the new product, and there was a lot of push for us to go direct to customer. Now, had we gone direct to customer, we would have succeeded, I think mildly, but we took a different approach. We actually mapped out the entire solution stack, and we went to the service providers, carriers, like AT&Ts of the world, and we went to the customer through them. Now, what did that do for us? First, we went to a point in the purchase cycle where there was zero competitors. Not fewer, actually, I should have said zero. There were literally no competitors when we went to that stage of the buying cycle. The second thing it did is, so the carriers were giving this platform to customers to use. This was the default platform they would get with their IoT connectivity service. So the second thing it did is it turned our product into a default solution. Default is beautiful. How many of you use something that's default? I'm sure many of you do. But default lets you get an access to a customer base without spending so much effort in sales and marketing, right? Think like a CEO rather than a marketer. Like, how do you get to market faster, cheaper, better? The third thing it did is it enabled us to integrate with carriers that helped us deliver some unique capabilities that nobody else in the market could. So it's a beautiful model. We adopted this, and Cisco Jasper today is actually the #1 IoT connectivity platform in the market, the largest player in the market, and just primarily because of these strategic decisions of how they went to market. Third point, how do you sell? This one I think I can spend less time on. You're all marketers, you know how to do this. But let me go back to Ansof's model. So the column that we left earlier on the left side, that talks about how do you get to new markets or existing markets. Is that me? Am I doing something? Okay. So how do you get to new markets? If you have an existing product, you're essentially either penetrating the market or developing a new market. And the two strategies that I've seen work here typically is switching customers. So if you have an existing product and you're going after an existing market, you're essentially playing in a space where the customer base is pretty mature, And so this is a great opportunity for you to really start switching customers. And there are so many companies, you've heard the famous Coke wars, Coke and Pepsi wars. There's a lot of service providers or carriers out there who are constantly trying to switch, customers onto their platform. If you are an existing product, but you're trying to go after a new market, the strategy that I've seen work very well, and so many companies are doing this extremely effectively, is go to the market through a channel. So how many of you heard of companies that go to market through a channel? VMware is one. Any others that you can think of? Microsoft? Pretty largely successful companies who go to market through channel. Now, cultivating a channel, training them, enabling them is hard, but it's no more harder than training your own sales team. So I believe this model can work extremely effectively to very quickly get to a market, new market, and land grab before your competitors take hold. So that really brings conclusion to the gist of my content. I don't know how much time I have, but I want to spend a few minutes on addressing what we saw earlier. When I asked you how many of you really influence the product or decide which product to build, very few of you raised your hands, right? So I want to talk about how to make product marketing, how to turn product marketing into a more strategic org. What I find is that there are 3 areas where product marketers should focus on, and I want to talk about those 3 areas here. The first one that I observe and notice is, as product marketers, there is so much we have to do. Our roles are so broad that we get caught up in the day-to-day execution, and we're not really pausing to step back and think big. So every time there is a task, we're executing on the incremental changes. But if you make thinking big a habit, you're constantly pausing and saying, how can I take this to 10x or 20x or 200x? Like, if you constantly think about that with every element, I think that'll get you into the habit of thinking like a CEO or a business leader rather than a product marketer. The second thing I find is product marketing tends to be a very lean org in most companies. I've been in most of the companies I've been in, there are a few product marketers, like one product marketer per product, or sometimes doubling up products, which is very hard for you to really be strategic if you're that slim. So the first thing I would say is, push for building and expanding your team. Really push for that, because this is a very key strategic org, and you need to make the case to add more product marketers. What does that do? That frees your mind to actually sit down and think about a strategy. Otherwise, you're just running. The second thing you want to do is own the data. So a lot of times data is managed by competitive insights team, by PMs. Now, if you bring that into the product marketing org, or if not, at least you're closely aligned with data where you're the expert on the market data, the customer data, then you have a lot more insights than compared to the rest of the org, right? So you become the expert, you become the go-to person for that. The third thing that I want to suggest to you is, take this time and knowledge that you're now gaining if you do this right, to raise and suggest things. Talk about acquisitions you can have, talk about go-to-market strategies. You may not, say 90% of your ideas may be ignored, and that's fine, but at least 10% of your ideas may be explored, and you need not do the whole due diligence on that strategy, but you can be the first person to raise it and bring it up, and then you can work with different people to actually execute on it. So that would elevate your visibility in the org, where you're seen as somebody who's thinking beyond just the tactical aspect of marketing and thinking beyond as a strategic leader. And you'll be brought into conversations when they're thinking about acquisitions and things like that. And lastly, I want to leave you with this thought. There are a lot of companies who talk about, hey, we embrace failure, and failure is accepted and celebrated, and we think of failing fast. But in reality, when somebody fails at that organization, they're typically shunned. Have you seen that in your experience as well? So how do you overcome this? What I've found to work best is, if you start creating a culture of testing. So what happens with the testing mindset is when you start positioning everything that you're doing, I don't mean the marketing positioning, I mean I'm talking about the tactics that we're doing. When you start positioning the things that you're going to do as a test, then it becomes a scientific exercise, and the executive leadership, their mindset changes. They start thinking about, they expect failure because they're like, okay, 50% of this will go wrong. No, that's fine because it's a test, right? So the acceptance of failure becomes better. And so constantly use the word test, use it liberally with everything. So you can, go and test your messaging, go and test your business impact, go and pilot your products, like do everything in a test mode and come back and report on those results. So it becomes a scientific exercise rather than a personal failure. So if you fail, hey, it was a test, we tried it, A/B tested it, multivariate tested it, and some things worked and something didn't, and this is what we learned about it. So you become more, that the chances that you're taking in the market, the risks that you're taking in the market become more acceptable, and you're not, the failure of that is not associated with your personal brand. So that's all I have. I'd love to open it up for questions, and if you have any awesome strategies that you've seen in your careers, I'd love to learn as well. So please do share. Thank you. Please share as well, because I really want to know what's working for you.
When you say test often, what do you think about the balance of testing in non-real environments versus testing in real environments with real customers? And when you test so frequently with real customers, the risk of causing a bad experience?
So, good question. When I think of testing, not everything you would test with the same customers, right? You might have different segments, you might have customers in different journeys. So I would say build just like you would build a toolbox of product marketing tactics, you would build a repertoire of customer councils. Don't just focus on one customer council that you're going to, but different types of customers. So for example, right now we have a set of customers whom I go to for messaging because they're really good at giving that kind of feedback. Then I have another set of customers who are actually piloting a new product. So if I have anything related to that product, I would go to them. So sort of diversify and have a broader set of customers. And you may or may not test everything directly with a customer. You might actually hire a company just to do a survey, or you might run a survey on your own. So it'll be a little bit removed, and you could get broader feedback and data from non-customers as well out in the market. Hopefully that answers your question.
So you would want to create a test that
might go viral. A test that would go viral. Can you give an example?
You want to put real guard to it so it doesn't become that public.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what you're testing to figure out what you should sell, how you should price it, how you should message it, and things like that, right? So this is a closed testing environment for your own strategic decisions. So absolutely, it would be closed. If you were a consumer product, on the other hand, I don't sell to B2C, but that might be an option for that market. I'm not sure. Where you need a large, massive data set, right? Larger, massive than a B2B organization. So maybe there's some, opportunity there for viral, but that's not the intent behind the survey. It's really to educate and inform yourself. Right. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going through that process right now. A good timely question. The question was, when you're thinking of growing your team, how do you carve out the different roles and how do you differentiate that from product management, if I'm getting that right? And to gain ownership of the data and intelligence. So A lot of times it starts with the product marketing leader, right? Go to the person who's leading the entire org and sort of use them as a champion to get competitive intelligence as part of product marketing, which is the model I believe is the right approach because you understand your competitors better. I don't believe in having a separate competitive intelligence org. If there is one, that should live within product marketing. So it's a lot of conversations at the very top, trying to demonstrate what kind of intelligence we can bring in if this was in the product marketing org versus now not, and how that would feed into the rest of the rest of the go-to-market strategy. So proving out that conversations at the higher level to make that get that buy-in. But you could also use testing to show that, right? You could create, say, a competitive analysis that you've done and compare that with the quality and level of something that an independent group has done and see how that's different. There's actually, if you meet me later, I'll show you a really beautiful model I've used at a previous company, and I'm trying to adopt it here as well, where you take the buy team and you identify the buy criteria that matters to that team, and you then evaluate the entire competitive landscape against that buy criteria, right? Most competitive organizations don't do that. They don't look at the buy team and the buy criteria to really evaluate, because that's what you need. That level of intelligence and against the buy criteria is what you need to determine what the roadmap should be, what the positioning should be. So if you bring in those kind of insights and approaches, I think there's more appetite to have it included within you. But it's constant. It's a constant pitch, right? You got to document everything. You got to document what this person would do. What are their tasks? How would you justify it? How would they deliver results for you? And sort of go and lobby for it. And you get allies to lobby for you.
Yeah. Pallavi, hi.
Yes.
I'm on this side.
Okay, got it.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was something that really resonated with me. I am a product marketer myself with Socrata in Seattle. And I just wanted to share something. I actually had all of the exact same problems that you listed in the last 3, and I've been there for about a year now, 11 months.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share what worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the first things that, in terms of what is the work that I wanted to carve out for myself, it was very obvious that we had a lack of staff at product marketing, and we also had a lack of recognition of the role. So one thing that helped me was to align what are the things that I'm going to pick to work on over the next year very strongly with the business goals of the division.
Yeah.
So the top priorities for me were all something that I knew the results of which will immediately gain visibility with leadership, because that was the thing. And the second thing was to align with people whom I recognized as like key stakeholders who are driving and finding the sponsorship. So it was kind of, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but it pleasantly has, and now I have a headcount for 2. So that's something that really worked well. So thank you so much for your talk. It really resonated, and I'm a lot of this.
And that's absolutely beautiful what you said. I want to build upon that. I want to add one more thing. When you're talking about the things you're going to take on, it's actually also important to highlight the things you're not going to take on. So the senior leaders understand what they're going to have to let go if they don't give you headcount. So what I tend to do is do exactly what you're saying, but also list out, here are the areas that will continue to be red if I don't get headcount, right? So that's another way of sort of helping them see what will be lost, what's the opportunity cost of not growing this critical org.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for a great day. I believe we have the awards downstairs, followed by a mixer. So you can probably find some of the speakers down there, as well as the sponsors and the hosts. So see you down there.